flu shots? Aren't half your daughters doctors or more? They didn't tell you to get the flu shot?
They did, and I did.
Have
I
you
they
got it? Did it
tested
work?
they tested me at Yale today, and they said you don't have the flu. You got a shot for it.
Oh, well, that's good to know, isn't it?
Yeah, they said we test for three of them, and you don't have any of the three.
You are lucky. You're a lucky guy.
So you're just gonna have to like live. Not fun, but
Yeah.
anyway.
Let's see here.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Seth.
Let me just grab my agenda. Let's see. So it's just pulling up the agenda. Let's see. We'll get started. I think everyone's here. Let's see. Is George here?
No, we're missing George and Sharon, but we should have a quorum.
Okay. It's only 5:30. We'll give him another minute. I'm pretty sure George is planning on attending. I don't know about Sharon.
Look at there's Bob. I see it.
Yes.
Wow.
Yep, it's 82 degrees.
82 degrees, sun and fun, baby. Way to go. I want
Yeah,
to see some water.
there's the water. Wow.
Nice.
Yep.
I think we
All
should
right,
adjourn to wherever Bob is.
quick panorama. Here we go.
Nice.
Life is good for Bob.
But I missed you guys so much. I had to tune in.
Ah, have you caught any fish yet, Bob?
Yeah, that
Or is that
so I bone fish with a fly rod. So I won't get into the whole thing, but so it's sight fishing. So you have to see the fish first. So
oh,
half the thing is finding the fish first,
wow.
and then you're fishing for them. They're the eighth fastest fish in the world. They travel 40 miles an hour. So it's fun. It's a lot of fun. But we caught six yesterday and got two today.
Well, we all envy you. By the way, it was a balmy, I think 51 today though, and partly sunny. So it was
Yeah. And I
perfectly
may
normal.
not come home.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
heard
I know
they, I
you're
heard they got started though. I heard they got started on the project.
they did. The trees are
Good,
down,
good, nice,
moving fences up, silt fence. So yeah, so it's real.
great.
Uh,
They left more
So
trees than we wanted, Bob, though, but they left some.
I know it looked like there weren't too many left there on that stone wall. I don't know. I thought Bill, you were out waving them, moving a few flags the night
Removing
before.
the flags. They still
Yes.
left a few that probably should have come down.
Yeah, it's always more expensive later.
Well, I guess it's 5:34. Let's start the meeting. Call the meeting to order. Public comment. Raquel, is there anyone with their hand raised?
No.
Moving on to item number 3, approval of prior minutes, March 7th, 2024. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review. Does anyone have any comments? I mean, would anyone want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
Oh, sure, I'll do that.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I can second it.
Okay, thank you. Old business, none. Moving on to item number 4, new business, the architect's report.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Justin Hopkins, Tecton Architects. Real limited update because we've mostly been working with Colliers and Gilbane to go through some of the GMP items to get you prepared for this evening's motions and votes. I can tell you that we will be moving into the construction administration phase, which we will be submitting weekly reports on our field visits, RFIs, submittals, any action items. And we will be targeting this summer to start the FF&E and technology procurement discussion. So basically, it's a similar phase with the Office of Grants Administration that we recently went through with the general construction. We will start going through that phase again in order to align procurement for summer or delivery of these materials for summer of 2025. So we anticipate starting that with the district to go through furniture review and budgeting, as well as technology review and budgeting within a couple of months. Once the crush of submittals gets through, we'll move quickly into that phase. Other than that, I think tonight's mostly Adam and Nick's show.
Got it. Thanks, Justin. Moving on, you want to go with Nick? You want to go first? Any updates on the actual construction like to share?
Yeah, sure. So probably the last one before Rob starts giving them. Our office trailer should be landing early next week. Be up and running via generator within a day or so after that. But on site, we've got the perimeter construction fence is probably about 80% complete. I think the north elevation is the only one that's not completely tight yet. The gates, two entrances to the site on Mungertown Road. Going in tomorrow, the sediment and erosion control, so the silt fence and the hay bales, and all that, all those items are largely complete as well. We had a good walkthrough today with Aaron Mannix and the sediment erosion control monitor, Jim. I forget his last name. I apologize, and I'm not familiar with the company that he's working for, but he'll be doing the weekly monitoring for the town on behalf of the town. Good walk today with them. It's going through all of those measures that have been put in place. Got a few more left to do, and just continuing to work with the team to get the topsoil situation going and get that behind us. And then middle of next week should be stripping topsoil if all things go well. And our plan is to start foundations in about 3 weeks, 3-4 weeks, Rob.
Yep. Yeah. Right around the week of April 8th, we should be mobilizing the concrete contractor. So that'll be a big milestone. And then just today we did our kind of kickoff with Tecton and Colliers for the construction administration, construction phase. And then moving forward, we'll have our weekly OAC with the team as well.
Any questions?
The ribbon. I don't know if Adam's going to cover probably in his calendar. The ribbon, the groundbreaking ceremony. Is that tentatively planned?
Yeah, we'll kick that one to Adam.
Yeah, April 3rd at 9:45 a.m. It'll be because of the site constraints, and there's not really parking on site that's going to be available. They're going to be moving dirt. It's not going to be a grandiose event in terms of the number of people. Talking with the first selectwoman's office and the superintendent's office, invitees from staff and the boards and state representatives, things of that nature. But again, April 3rd, obviously, school building committee is invited to to that event. So some more details to come from that, but otherwise that's the date.
Bring your mud shoes if you choose to attend.
I can walk, so that'll save some parking.
Got it. Moving on. Okay, I guess that takes us to Adam's update.
Yeah, so I'll for today I'll share just that since we last met, the big focus has been, as Justin pointed out, looking at the GMP. There've been a couple of drafts that have gone through with Gilbane and Tecton and Collier's comments, and working through all the details of a large award for moving into construction. So those wrapped up, and that'll be the main subject for today is approving the GMP. It's technically an amendment to Gilbane's contract, so approving that GMP amendment, and then some of the alternates that we can talk through here in a minute. One thing I did want to share, just as we move into construction, to give just a brief synopsis on schedule and budget, just to kind of set the tone for where we are. So for schedule, the project is decidedly on schedule at this point. If you go way back to the original construction contracts and RFPs and bringing the architect on board, the notion was always to start construction on or before April 1st with substantial completion May 31st, 2025. And that's exactly what we're doing. There's people in the field already. It's March, and the GMP reflects a substantial completion date of May 31st, 2025. So in terms of schedule, on schedule. For budget, obviously the topic comes up a lot in terms of where we're at and what happened with escalation and alternates and VE and extra money from the referendum and all that. So the original construction budget was 46.6 million, and we encountered a lot of issues along the way with escalation and being over budget. There's a lot of value engineering and alternates, and a lot of good work was done to reconcile not only the costs, but also to bring in extra money into the project to make sure we're moving forward on sound footing. The budget for construction moving into this GMP approval was 52.5 million. So the GMP right now sits at 48. So it is well underneath that 52.5 million that we've been with the increased construction budget. But I wouldn't forget that is still above where the project initially started as. So all that good work on value engineering and alternates was needed to get to where we are today. And the perception that we're drastically under or over budget, it's been following the process the way it should be. And in terms of what to do with the $4.5 million difference between construction budget and where GMP is sitting, that's going to be the discussion that takes place, not just with this group, with Board of Selectmen, but from Board of Education, as we move forward over the next several months, to identify what would happen with that difference between the GMP and the construction budget. So again, lots of good work has been done. Project is moving on a sound financial footing, and there's some good decisions that can be made in the sense of how to manage the funds that are extra right now in the construction budget.
And can you remind us how much we moved over? How much was moved over from Polson to our project, just so everyone remembers what that number is?
Yeah, so 3.4 was moved from Polson. And then another, I think it's 2.1 was moved into the construction budget from this budget's contingencies. So that's comprises that, if you recall, there was about a $5 million delta that we were dealing with the last time around with reconciling estimates to budgets. So that's where that 2.1 and 3.4 came together.
And that saving now we're 4.5 million. So we're actually a little bit over what the original, in quotes, number was.
Yes, we're about 1.6 over 1.4 over the original project budget. Yes.
Got it. Good.
We're still gonna
Yeah,
I have a
go ahead.
question. We're not counting any kind of rebates we're gonna get from our energy efficiency stuff?
Correct.
I-
That's not
I-
figured into these numbers because it comes
You-
after the project.
Right, it does come after. No, but that's good to kind of keep out there that people realize that we're not being foolish in our spending. No, that we have
Yeah,
something
no.
back. Yeah,
Unfortunately, because the referendum number, you can't exceed, as you recall, the referendum number is the magic number. And even though we got another $6 million, if you remember, we got an additional $6 million in grant funding from the state. Not to mention the potential $4 million from the IRA rebate or tax credit thing. That $10 million does not help us build the project, unfortunately. So another reminder is that when they did move that $3.4 million over the Board of Selectmen, they did see, they were worried about what we're going to spend the money on, and we committed to going back to them before we spent the money so they could make sure, because the Polson project has not been fully designed yet. So it's a little bit difficult, but they said don't do anything rash with the money, with the assumption that they might need that money back. Luckily, we potentially could give them that money back if everything falls in our way, potentially. So that's just a reminder. But it's it's good. We're in a good place. It's just we didn't win the lottery, so to speak. Yeah, so any questions on anything regarding that topic? So Adam, I think you're gonna are we ready to get anything else you want to add, or you want to talk?
No, let's
the
get into
GMP
it.
approval? Yeah.
Yes. Seth had his hand raised. I don't know.
Oh.
Yeah, hi. In looking over the GMP document, it does appear that there were several alternates that were included, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 alternates that were included within that $48 million. Is that how that works, or am I
So
reading that wrong?
the draft that that distributed before this meeting contemplated some initial initial inclinations of what alternates are probably more likely to be approved here tonight. That document was just a draft for the purposes of illustration. So I'll walk through the numbers here, and ultimately the approvals here and then any confirmations of the Board of Selectmen on Monday would comprise what the formal approval is in this first wave, if you will. And I'll explain all that in a moment here.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so in talking with Graham just before the meeting, he thought it might be useful to split up the topics just so we can go through it systematically in terms of GMP and then the various alternates. But I can give you an overview first, and then we can get into the actual motions. So let me share my screen here. All right, so just in terms of a one-page summary of the GMP, this is the bottom line number, the 48,017,321, that comprises the base scope without any of the alternates we could talk here about in a moment. And this represents the collection of all the various bid packages that were put out to bid by Gilbane and the competitive bidding process and vetting the scope reviews. This is the net result of that effort, coupled with Gilbane's costs and fees. If you recall back to when Gilbane was first selected, we were talking about the CMP percentage and talking about the construction contingency percentage. That's all been baked into these numbers to arrive at this 48 million. The only caveat I would add, just so no one's surprised when it comes down the pipe here in a few weeks, one of the packages, this 5B, you'll notice there's a blank line item there. Currently, this GMP carries an allowance for that value based on the bids that were received. However, that package does need to be rebid just because there was some scope issues with the manufacturer and pricing, and so the 3 bidders that we had weren't able to hold their numbers, so it needs to be repackaged and rebid to get the closeout on that. So again, in a future meeting, maybe it's the next meeting or the meeting thereafter, you might hear about some award for this package. That's what that's all about, and that's why this line item is blank. But all in total, when you're hearing about just base scope GMP, that's where this $48,017,000 number is coming from. Any questions on that before I just go through the alternates real quick? Okay. So in addition to that number, there are the 12 alternates that were developed throughout the design process where we took scope out, but we didn't chop it completely out. We wanted to see what the pricing might be to see if it was advantageous or possible to put it back into the project and get some good bid numbers. So we can go through these individually in a moment, and I can share with you some insights into them. But by and large, the alternates were for, number one, the horizontal solar sunshades. We have vertical sunshades on the building, and we have shades in the building, but we didn't have the horizontal fins in the base scope. Telescoping chair risers. This was at the gym stage. I'll talk about that one in a moment here. Linoleum flooring as opposed to the base scope VCT. The sidewalk along Mungertown Road. That's just between the two driveways. It's not the entirety of the stretch between the school building campus with the high school. It's not that. It's just that one strip between the two driveways of this property. The radiant flooring. This was one of the items that was originally ed spec but was pulled out as an alternate. The pre-action fire suppression system. Again, this was also technically in the ed spec but was pulled out just based on whether it was appropriate or not for an elementary school. Kitchen dishwasher. This is the third item that was from the ed spec. Gymnasium scoreboards. The scope has base scope has all of the backup infrastructure, but the scoreboards themselves were pulled out as a potential thing that could be added later. Alternate 9, it says playscape, but this is for Gilbane's site contractors' work to prepare the surfaces for a third playground. The playground equipment, its surface, rubberized surface itself would be part of this summer's additional scope work that gets designed through TechDOT. So this is for the site make ready work to receive a playground, that third playground, I should say. Number 10 was the pollinator pathway over on the east side of the site. 11 was the outdoor storage for facilities for their equipment, tractors, snow blowers, things like that. And then number 12 was for landscape plantings. Just we have landscaping on site, but there was some additional plantings sprinkled throughout that was pulled out as an alternate that could be added later. If you've noticed the way this is structured, each alternate has just a very brief description of scope. It's got the cost that would be added to Gilbane's GMP if it was approved. And then there's also a date here on the right that aligns with when Gilbane would need to know if that scope is approved or not in order to move forward with that pricing. Some of it is derived by just holding the price. Some of it's derived by the construction schedule. So things that affect the site need to be decided more early than things that don't need to happen till later. So you need to do site prep work that involves the heavier machinery early. The plantings you can do later, which is why this date is 4/1 for the outdoor storage, and this date is December 1st for the plantings. So there's those three components. And for tonight, the intent is that not all of the approvals need to happen tonight for every single alternate. For example, you don't need to decide tonight about landscape plantings for $8,000. That can occur later in December as part of a reevaluation of where we're at budgetarily. But for the outdoor storage, we should decide tonight if you want to something you want to entertain or not because of the timing. If you notice, there were a couple of red boxes around some of them as we've been going through. Those reflect the scope items that might be something the committee entertains more than the others for this evening. Just based on either timing or the appropriateness of the scope or pricing or what have you. It's basically a collection of feedback from BOE and the First Selectwoman's office and this group and pricing and trying to get a general sense and coalesce around how recommended it may or may not be to approve at this meeting. And similarly, there are scope items that likely don't want to be entertained based on pricing or appropriateness of scope. So for example, the radiant flooring came in at a very high cost. it will push out the completion of the building by a week. And just some of the perceptions from around, the various discussions suggest that this might not be one that the town wants to entertain. So, point being is we can walk through these and talk through them, but the ones with the red boxes are ones that may be more, up for a higher likelihood of approval tonight, if you will, if that's a fair way to say that, than some of the others. Any questions on just in general before we, I don't know, maybe make a motion on GMP and then walk through the alternates? Graham, does that sound like the plan you had envisioned?
Yeah, I mean, some of them are, I know they have dates of like 4/1 on them, but, and that's a contract in the bid. I mean, then we'd be subject to negotiating the extra if we, in theory, don't approve that. Is there any leeway with that, those items, or are they?
This is the quote. So if you want this scope, you should, that's the price that would get added to Gilbane's contract to include that scope.
Yeah, I mean, the dating 4/1 that we have to
Oh.
decide if we don't do that on the date, this, by this meeting.
Some of these
Yeah.
don't become impossible, but they
Yeah,
either
I mean,
the
really, some
pricing
are
would
more,
change
more
or-
difficult than others, yeah.
Right.
But that's from the contractor, or is that our estimate of?
This
is that
this is from the contract. This is from Gilbane.
okay? That's what I meant. Yeah, it's a contractual matter. And then we'd be subject to potentially negotiating it later. If we were to postpone something, if it was technically feasible, even,
Right,
We'd have to
if
negotiate as it
suddenly June 1st, there was a strong desire to have the sunshades, assuming it didn't impact schedule, we would coordinate with Gilbane about, is that pricing the same? Has it been higher? Is it, what would the impacts be? But if you don't want to have an impact to schedule and this price is good, you take it before 4/1.
got it.
I have a question. I'm wondering why we're not looking at any of those last final cuts, like the windows opening that were cut in that last round after we lost that money over the summer. And those were kind of our last, the things we wanted in more than some of these.
So some of the scope items were cut because of the way they needed to be designed and detailed. So in theory, I mean, the number of alternates could be infinite and you could have just this building that doesn't have any cohesiveness to it. But something like sunshades is simpler to put on after the fact or separate out because it's just part of what you would order with the window system versus a window that requires detailing, integration with the surrounding facade. It's not just as simple as sticking a window or not. The documents need to be changed. The design needs to be changed. It's more integral to the overall design. So it's harder to just have that be a side alternate. And at some point you need to have some limit to your alternates to be able to have a project that again has some cohesion to it and understanding what's in base scope, what's not basically.
So, but what about like the tiles on the ceilings? That's just a material that we had to go with the lower quality that will cause more noise between spaces.
So that's a good example of one that's not just the material, the way that's connected, detailed. It's not just a matter of swapping this for that and you change the material. It changes, for some of those details, it changes construction schedule even because it's much more difficult to install and lengthier to install some of the hard lid ceilings than it is a 2x6 acoustic ceiling tile grid. So that's a good example of one that wasn't an alternate because of the implications of having one versus the other.
I see Sharon has her hand up.
I do. Has the Board of Ed been consulted or what's the word? Talked to yet about the alternates and what they would like? I mean, I would think they would have a say.
So
I see Seth has his hands up. Oh, yeah. I think they'll as we go through, I think they'll feel comfortable commenting on giving their opinion on that matter. Seth, is that correct?
Sure. We have not had an opportunity as a board to consider any of these alternates that came out at the end. We did have some we had general discussion and even votes on a couple things. We ended up not voting on the radiant flooring, but there was a strong sense among my fellow board members that not only is that a bit of a luxury, but it also would create a disparity between the new school and Brown because you can't go back in and put radiant flooring at Brown. So there was a general agreement by the board, that a sentiment of agreement, though we didn't vote on it, that we could scrap the radiant flooring, as Adam alluded to. The question that I have is, I know that one of Sharon's last requests in that last round of cuts was that if we had money, if we could come back, and I think it was about $70,000, maybe it was less, to include the wayfinding decals on the walls and the graphics. I just wanted to circle back to that. I'm not sure if the committee did not end up cutting that out and it's still in because we found other cuts, or whether we would have to vote on that now.
We
And I say
reduced,
not me, but
I believe we reduced the amount going in. We still have it in areas, but we just limited how much.
okay. And then another question. I know that I was a proponent of removing some of the glazing because that was expensive and we needed to cut a lot. The one area that called for glazing initially that we ended up cutting along with some of the other glazing, that might be we might want to consider putting back depending on the price and whether we can or not, timing wise and design wise, is the glass wall between the library and overlooking the hallway. Because that seems like a design feature that would be nice to have if we can afford it. It opens up the library. It includes the library in the rest of the school instead of sequestering it.
So I know we had kept some of the library. There was a number of glazing components that were kept, and some of them were transferred out. The short answer is for tonight, we have the pricing on alternates. There will be, especially as we move through the project, there will be ideas and concepts of what to add into the project or put back, or there's been for example, there was the front sunshade that we were talking about with, not sunshade, but the canopy area over the pre-K that Sharon had highlighted that isn't in this scope, but it might be something that the project might contemplate. So all those types of discussions in terms of let's call them betterments, that's usually a phrase that we use, can still be had. Right now for this evening, these were just the alternates that we do have pricing for. And then as part of a comprehensive review of what to do with additional contingency funds, when to release those funds, because we feel safe that, okay, maybe we don't need 4 million in contingency, maybe we can go down to 3 and use $1 million for X. That's something that will get fleshed out over the next several months and really throughout the life of the project. But for tonight, those items aren't here simply because they weren't part of the prescribed alternates that went out to public bid. So that's why you only see a limited list here versus the potential of any sort of change.
All right. And then one final thing I wanted to add, because it might also help save a little bit of time as we go through these. Although it sounds like a safety issue and, it sounds awful to say we're taking it out. The fact is we heard from project experts here that the what is it, the fire suppression in the closet is kind of overkill for an elementary school, and it's really not necessary for the amount of IT that's going to be in that building. So I don't feel like the Board of Ed would object to keeping that out. So you have $500,000 in givebacks there.
Yeah,
This
that was
one-
in the ed spec, right, Seth, I believe.
What's
So
that?
That was actually included in the ed spec, right, I believe. But I agree with you 100%. We just have to, it's a extra pay.
So we would
Yeah,
have to vote for it. We
Vote
would
for
have to
remove-
vote, in other words.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. But you're okay with removing it.
So
As-
that-
as-
I'm okay, but yeah, if it was in the ed spec, then we would have to vote as a board.
exactly. But
this since we're on the call, it's not that the MDF and ID reforms are without suppression systems. It's just this particular type of suppression system is usually geared for other types of buildings with more technology, not an elementary school. And so it was in the ed spec, but coordinating with the IT director, it was not something that was absolutely needed. It was just part of the development of the ed spec process that got put in there. It's not that there's unprotected DF and IDF rooms. So just, and that actually kind of segues into a good point of, for approving the alternates, that's what, anything that gets approved tonight from alternates would be released to Gobain, again, pending Board of Selectmen vote on Monday to incorporate that scope into the work. And so some of these, quite frankly, shouldn't get votes tonight because there needs to be additional follow-up. For example, this linoleum flooring item is something we need to circle back with facilities and the design team and Gilbane to determine what the implications are. But if there's something that is the group is unsure of or whatnot, not all of these need to have a vote tonight. And quite frankly, these are just motions to approve to include in Gilbane's scope. And then the rest will either be deferred to a later time or will sort of be pocket vetoed if they're never approved to be added to the scope, either as part of an alternate or a future change order.
I see Sharon, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I have another question. The sidewalk between the two driveways,
Yes.
who put that in and why do we need that? What's the purpose?
So that came up for a couple of reasons. That was something that was brought up by the neighbors when we had the neighborhood outreach meeting. There was a strong desire, Bill and the others can attest to it, from the neighbors to include this sidewalk just between the driveways to provide an avenue of safety because of the bus traffic and parental drop-offs and things that'll be generated in that area, even though there aren't connecting sidewalks as of now. Even in advance of any potential, future sidewalk development, having that area to be able to go to outside the road if you're a bicyclist or a walker was something strongly requested from the neighbors in that area. It was also something that was proposed as part of the discussions with planning and zoning and included in the site plans. You'll notice it doesn't have a red box on it this evening. That's because when we were coordinating with Bill and Peter for facilities earlier, this quote for the alternate is for an asphalt type sidewalk. Sidewalk projects going on around town are concrete. So it doesn't have a red box because that alternate shouldn't be taken, quite frankly, at this juncture. We'll get a separate pricing from Gilbane from their concrete contractor to provide what that pricing would be for a concrete sidewalk. So
Oh, I thought number 4 was on your list.
it was initially until 2 hours ago when we confirmed the scope of the other sidewalks. So yes, good eye.
Yeah, and the town is pursuing a grant to install sidewalks all the way around up Green Hill to the existing school complex.
That would be nice.
Yeah,
I just think between the two driveways, it doesn't really serve much purpose. I don't see.
I'll back up Adam. When we were the neighbors, it was the one thing they were adamant about. I guess if there's kids like jogging, and a lot of people are like, jogging or running cross country teams, and there's no place to go, and a car comes along, and especially with the stone wall there, it was an unsafe condition.
We can talk about it at a future meeting when we have the concrete pricing, but it'll be, I would say, strongly suggested to be incorporated into the project one way or another.
I just confirm with what you guys just said. I remember it all as well.
Yeah, the neighbors were pretty reasonable. So these few requests were, we more than accommodated them, considering the impact to their properties.
And I can say from the regulatory process, pedestrian access, and even though the sidewalks on this property would not be connecting to a sidewalk either to the north or the south, I think both bodies that we're in front of, ACA and P&Z, supported at least future-proofing Mungertown Road for connection of a pedestrian walkway. So it was viewed advantageously, both starting with the neighbors and then with the regulatory bodies.
So Graham, do you want to, I have a draft motion for the overall GMP, and then if you want to go through and walk through the alternates individually, we can do that.
Let's make a motion on the GMP because that's really the priority, and getting that approved by the Board of Selectmen is critical so we can release Gilbane completely to move forward with the project, keep it on schedule. If we don't get the approval on Monday night, then potentially we'll be pushing the date back of the completion. So would anyone like to make a motion of reading this?
I'll make it.
Okay.
So a motion to approve the guaranteed maximum price amendment to Gilbane's contract dated March 25th, 2024, including the award of the trade packages outlined in the GMP deliverable document revision 2 dated March 21st, 2024, and summary of recommended bidders and GMP memo dated March 11th, 2024. Subject to approval by the Board of Selectmen, this approval contemplates the GMP value in the amount of $48,017,321.
Thank you, George. Any discussion? Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Whitney. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Thank you, Bob, for showing up from the Bahamas to vote on this milestone. Your grandkids will thank you that you spent the money, I think.
All right, and then I
And
will
now-
share my screen again
Yep.
here, and we can
Yep.
go through the alternates. So
Adam,
alternate- okay.
It's George. Before you start into the alternates, can you or Graham remind us, do the Board of Selectmen weigh in on these individually as well for final approval, or is this just the building committee?
So
Well,
in-
I mean,
oh, good.
yeah, I mean, we had committed to when they moved the $3.4 million over, there was some hesitancy on their part, and they said they made one request that before we spent the money, before we spent the alternates, that we would confer with them. So I think within reason we can move some things forward, but anything we do could subject to a discussion and a delay in them approving it. Because as I said, they moved the money from the Polson project to this project, so we can go out to bid, with the caveat that they may expect some of that money back. I mean, there's a good likelihood that they may need some of that money with the escalation that continues the impact. Does that answer your question, George?
Yeah, got it. Thanks. I just wanted to be sure.
I would add
Yep.
that anything with a red box has had some additional discussions and it seems to have some good support from those we've talked to around town. The notion I did clarify with Peggy and the finance director Stacy Novitz in a meeting a week or two ago. The expectation is not that the SBC needs to have every change order approved by the Board of Selectmen under Gilbane's contract. That's already promulgated to the SBC as part of managing the project. It's just these alternates get a little sticky because some of them are, quite frankly, large dollar values, and there was this over budget consideration. But we will have many change orders throughout the project, and not every single one of them needs to get Board of Selectmen approval. It's just this first wave seemed to have additional scrutiny because it was tied to the overall over budget nature of the project.
Can I just add one little caveat to that? My recollection of the discussion with the Board of Selectmen and their discussions when they were talking about moving over that money from the Polson portion of the school's renewal project, was that they weren't necessarily looking for veto power over anything that the SBC decided to add back in, as much as they were looking to coordinate in case they felt that they could
cooperative.
get grant money or something like that. And at the time, don't forget that we thought that the amount would be $5 million in savings from Polson, because we decided not to go with the geothermal because that existing older school, it just didn't make sense. As I understand it now, maybe there's some additional things that Polson would like to get done. So, I'm all in favor of, if we can get some stuff back there, that's great. I just would, I'm happy to hear from Adam that this does not impose a line item veto by the Board of Selectmen over the work of the SBC. I'll just put it that way.
Understood. And I think you put it correctly, collaborative with them. And hopefully, I think they're gonna have some more budget pricing in a few months that'll, give them more of a feeling of confidence.
So with that, just to go through these, alter number one, the horizontal sunshades, this is something where if the town wanted to proceed, now would be the time to vote on it and approve it. It is a larger dollar amount, 67,000, almost 68,000. Justin, this is, do you just want to walk through what these are, just on the technical nature?
Yeah, I'll start by noting, well, I'm going to share my screen, Adam, if that's okay.
Yeah,
And you
yeah,
guys
that's fine.
will have to forgive me because I am, I'm just going to use kind of our BIM 360 because rather than show you on the drawings where this is, because this is probably the best way to illustrate this. So these are basically horizontal screening devices that are associated with the aluminum storefront windows. They're more or less a shelf that is on the south side of the facade that helps reduce solar heat gain at the windows. As I mentioned in our OAC meeting this morning, we still have solar shades, roller shades on the inside of the window. So don't think of this as you wouldn't have any protection from solar glare. But what this does is reduces the solar heat gain. Admittedly, nominally, our current energy models are at a 22 EUI. And I think at the last meeting I reported, we have a relatively modest array to get to net zero here. So it doesn't really move the needle that much in terms of EUI, but it does assist that solar heat gain. But in the grand scheme of things, I think this committee should evaluate the other items that may affect curriculum and maintenance probably first from this. And while I have the floor, I just want, because Seth brought this up, I just want to quickly show, there was a comment, if I can find my X-plane here. I just want to reassure Seth that the glazing that is between the media center and the cafeteria is still pretty ample. I don't know if everybody can see the amount of glazing in the center. Our value management item was these benches that are on either side of the kind of main hall. So we still have a fair amount of transparency that kind of goes from the internal courtyard into the media center and then into our, whoops, one second, and then into our cafeteria. So if I do this, and again, apologies for the crudeness, but this is actually a great tool that through BIM 60 we can kind of take section cuts. You can kind of see how some of the spaces come together. So with that, I will take any questions on the solar shades.
And Justin, the reason this is a potential early action item, you explain whatever supply chain issues or whatever, why it's an early action.
Because it ends up becoming part of the overall storefront assembly shop drawings. It needs to be part of that development, and we anticipate going through the submittals. At our meeting this morning, it sounded like we'll get Gilbane is working with subcontractors to get all of the shop drawing submittals in the next 60 days from subcontractors. So those subcontractors would need that information in order to build it into their submittals.
So it doesn't significantly get us closer to net zero?
No, unfortunately.
Well, if it's not that big of a
I
assistance.
wish
with
it, I
that,
wish I could tell you it took us from 22, an EUI of 22 to an EUI of 18, but it's fractional.
Yeah, then I'd say it's not worth putting in. Actually, I'd rather see the linoleum floors that are easier to maintain. But whatever.
So it would fall in the category of building jewelry, I guess. Is that
So
It does add an architectural flair to
yeah,
the
no, they're very attractive. I agree with you. You know, every LEED gold building has them. It's like you can't get a LEED gold building without having those fins.
Yeah.
So, and they are very expensive for what they are.
So unless there's a strong opinion to move forward with the alternate, we can just move on. You don't need a motion to reject or anything.
Yep, understood.
Um, Next alternate actually should not be up for vote this evening. This is alternate 2 for the telescoping chair risers. However, when the bidders came in, they could not get pricing from the manufacturers. It's something that we potentially review to see what detailing may or may not be available, and working with the manufacturers to see if the scope could be put in. But as right now, it's not as though $13,000 will get you the telescoping chair risers. It's not a viable alternate to takers at the moment. So moving on. Alternate 3, similarly, we have about a month to look at this one. There likely should be some discussion before the committee takes action or not on this item. Just working through the schedule and working with Peter and Bill on the pros and cons of the linoleum flooring and its maintenance and whatnot. It does have a larger price tag. It also has an impact on schedule because it would be part of the key sequence of work. But again, advise probably not to take action on it tonight, just so additional discussions can be had with facilities.
So Adam, you'll meet offline with Bill and
yes, I will report back as a collective.
Great. Thank you.
Alternate 4, I had mentioned, also should probably not take action on this item tonight. We'll get a proposal request and a potential change order for this work to be concrete to align with other sidewalks in town of Madison. Radiant flooring, if it's something that would want to be pursued, that would be this evening would be the time. However, it sounds like based on just the cost, the impact of schedule, and the input that we've heard from Seth and Dr. Cook also, that this is, I imagine, something the committee doesn't want to add to the project, but it's not my call. So just up for consideration.
We don't need to make no motions. The ones we're
No, it's
And just
unless
some-
it's approved, it doesn't go into Gilbane's contract. So
understood.
for the pre-action fire suppression system, this is the other ed spec item that we were talking about that Seth had weighed in on, where it doesn't have a lot of vocal support that I've heard so far. It would be something that would need to be voted on tonight. It does have a 6-figure price tag. So we can talk about this more if we want, but I can move on to the next item also.
Anyone want to weigh in other than what Adam said? And Seth? We good, I assume? Okay.
All right, alter number 7. This is for the kitchen dishwasher. This was part of the ed spec. Pricing came in right, basically in line with the range of expectations for the cost. The base scope does include all the backup. This is for the actual unit to make it a functional component. By providing this, it eliminates a lot of ongoing maintenance costs and disposable costs for disposable washware, etc. There's technically some time, but quite frankly, if it's something that the town wants to proceed with, it's good to just get it out of the way, get it in the books, and so we can get the submittals moving and have it be part of the scope.
I say we put it in.
Yeah, it's something we need, right? We don't have a functioning school if we don't have this, right? We're not gonna wash them by.
They use disposables, so that's why it was an alternate,
Yeah.
but it's
Oh, okay.
strongly recommended, let's say.
Yeah, I second. Let's put it in.
Yeah.
So if you want to take a motion and a vote, it's just,
I'll make a motion that we add alternate number 7 to the GMP.
I'll second
I
it.
second.
Julie seconds. People really like dishwashers. Got it. I think we have two seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think that was unanimous. Thank you.
number 8, the gymnasium scoreboards. This one also has some time. It's highlighted red because there seemed to be some strong support. Just to be clear, this one may have some question about reimbursability with the state, just because it's largely serving additional programs outside the school in terms of the actual scoreboards. However, it was provided in red here as an initial thought because the pricing was favorable. It could conceivably be done on an outside project, but whether or not you'll get more favorable pricing than as part of the widespread bid package that Gilbane done, that was some of the questions. So it was one for serious consideration at tonight's meeting. But again, that's up to the group.
I think if the electrical and the data and the blocking of the infrastructure is already in the base bid, it would be silly not to include this. So I'd like to make the motion that we include it.
Any discussion? I mean, I know sometimes some projects I've been on where there was a advertising or donation component to this scoreboard. I don't know how realistic that is. But anyone want to second it?
That would be my thought too, Graham, because the Jeffrey PTO has already asked, what can they start fundraising for the new school? And that does seem like an easy one, unless there's a long list and we have other things we'd want to focus on for them.
Okay, so I mean, we have a little time anyway, so maybe we can confirm that that's a possibility. I mean, I know Coca-Cola historically used to do that, or somebody else. Maybe I know there's a lot of people in town that wouldn't mind having their name associated with the athletic complex, the aesthetic components of it. So it's an opportunity to save money that we may need at the end. So maybe we'll just table this one if everyone agrees for now.
Yeah,
That's
if I can't just add to that, we've also seen these procured as part of the FF&E package as well. So, if you made the decision later than the date here of May 5th, or even a little bit beyond that, we have seen those bought as FF&E if it didn't work out on the fundraising side.
Okay. I mean, I'm just wondering whether is this a pretty lean one? If we, by some blessing, we found out we had more money and we had the problem of putting money back in, could we upgrade the scoreboard if we wanted to, for example? Because we'll know that by the time we put out the FF&E package.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, the school will operate without the scoreboards. It was, like I said, it was a red box just because it had some strong support. But again, to your point, there's even time on this decision, and it's something that could be added later. But we're not hurting on the project side of things if this is not approved.
Yeah, I can see George's name on there. I can see if
Yeah, the elementary, third grade was the 4 best years of my life, back in the day.
Got it. Okay, so okay, moving on to number 9.
Dr. Cook and Tina had their hands raised.
Oh, I'm sorry. Got it.
Yeah.
I was just going to jump in real quick on the scoreboard. I know it's a small item. Sorry to take up more time on it. I do know that the days of Coca-Cola doing the scoreboards has kind of died out. We've looked into that before. The board also has a policy against the advertising. And the last thing I know, not to speak for the PTO, but I have spoken to PTO leaders before. I think that amount is probably outside of their scope that they would be able to give towards, because we were talking about a sign with the other PTOs for the North Campus for Brown Elementary School. Now that we'll be changing that, so I think that's probably a little too high. And then the last point, just Adam, maybe down the road, if and when we get to that point where we're purchasing that, if we can coordinate that with our athletic director, we're just trying really hard to have all the same scoreboards throughout the district. So we had to replace them recently at Daniel Han, and we're going with one company. So I don't know if that's an option here. Elementary is a little bit different, not used quite as much, but just want to make that point. Sorry.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe if we want to change it anyway, buy it at FF&E, buy it during a different procurement process.
Makes sense.
I'll flag it in the betterments log just so it doesn't fall off the radar in terms of, especially that last point of coordinating with the athletic director. So.
Got it. So Sharon, I assume you'll
Yeah,
remove your.
I'll take it. I remove it. That's fine.
Got it. Thank you.
Number 9, this is for, like I said, not the playscape itself, which is part of the separate phase package along with FF&E and IT, but for the enabling work, the groundwork to make this viable when we get to that phase. So that decision should be tonight if that's something the town wants to entertain.
So this is really early action stuff, right? I mean, they're going to be.
Yeah, they're when they're moving around the dirt, this is part of it. So by the time we get to May, the scope will have passed us by if we don't approve it.
All right, I like
And-
spending money, so I'll make the motion.
Got it. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Amanda. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think that was unanimous. So that third playground is in. That's good.
Alter number 10, in terms of timing for this scope, should be tonight. It was sort of on the fence of whether or not it's recommended or not. So all things considered, this is for that pollinator pathway, the path, I think it's a gravel or deco's granite or something to that effect, path on the east portion of the site with some extra plantings and whatnot. It's a larger one of the dollar values at 83,000. It did be part of a nod to some of the coordination with the land trust and just the outdoor development of the site. That doesn't mean that something couldn't be done later, but if this scope wanted to be entertained, it should be approved tonight.
Just by comment, I know it was a commitment we made to the land trust when we swapped the land, which is saving us $1 million+ dollars. And I know we talked to the Wetlands Commission also about the, including it. So I think we ultimately have to do it. But I also think we talked about incorporating some of the high school students and the land trust people in a design type thing to, incorporate that. And here's an opportunity for some volunteer type activity potentially, or donations of plants. Bob, are you still on the call? So I think maybe we can always, put this off to later if we do want to still buy it to the contractor. I mean, I know there's a date on it, but I think that's something we probably, we could probably do.
Something can be done, but maybe not. to the
I
extent
would
of
like
this
to
scope.
incorporate. Yeah, I mean, I think the opportunity to get the students, and I think some of the high school students have done something similar. Around the high school, I know kids are very, very motivated in this pollinator topic. We did something like this up in at Cones Pond, volunteer effort that was very successful, using ARPA funds and forced labor, including my kids and their spouses. So any yep.
Yeah, my only comment is that looks like there's $41,000 worth of Mizzy construction. So that may want to stay in there as opposed to the planting and stuff at 36. Because there's going to be some big site work to do for that. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it appears to be. I don't know what the detail of what was involved. Was that was the path?
I'll jump in here. So all of the grading is going to be base contract. I think that cost for Mizzy is basically subgrade as well as the material for the granular pathway. So that's what that is.
Okay, so the walking path wouldn't be included.
Correct.
It's part of base scope, correct?
So I guess if we did a path, it is not an ADA requirement anyway, right? This is not a requirement and the stone path wouldn't, it's the stone is the surface, is the wearing surface, I believe.
It's one of those things where if it's lawn, you can walk along it, but as soon as you make it a path, you need to make it ADA compliant. So that includes, you know, the granular pathway that is ADA compliant.
Nick, can you highlight or Nick or Rob, highlight the driver for this date? Is it the site work and the path? It's because the landscaping, it sounds like, is something that's can be after the fact if we wanted to add more trees or a collection of like benches, things like that. I would imagine don't need to happen early. It's just the path itself, I would imagine, is the key driver there, but maybe I'm wrong.
I believe it, yeah, it changes the grading, I think, in that area. So with the stripping of the site and then the regrading, I think that's the impact there. Rob, I don't know if you've got more detail on the exact condition.
Yeah, based on the schedule and when Mizzy would be working in that area and establishing that, it would require the early approval. The TC Lawn Care is the stone path being put down. So what these two numbers represent, Mizzy's giving you your sub base below the stone path, and they're also creating a couple concrete areas for drainage. So there's like 2 or 3 areas with a grate that allows drainage out of the site or towards, you know, through the site. So that's the Mizzy scope. And then the TC Lawn Care is the actual stone pathway. There's a couple plants up towards the school for like a sitting area, but that's about the extent of the plantings associated with this.
I was going to try to quickly pull up a drawing.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think
so this-
L1.
I have it, Adam, if you want me to share.
Yeah, go for it. Theater of mind doesn't work so well for a pathway.
Yeah, so if you go towards the top of the screen, there's a little just north of the playground. There's some plantings in that area. If you look on the landscape drawing, L3, I believe. Yeah. Yep. And then you
So if
can
we
see
didn't,
those.
yep.
And then there you can see the drainage crossings there, kind of as you're going down. Yeah, right there. There's one, and then a little lower.
So it's mostly construction work.
Yeah, it's not, it's literally the pathway.
Yeah, so it's not the
Not the
plantings,
foot.
it's really, yeah.
Yeah, it's all pathway, yeah. So
That,
it's
that
just a-
outdoor classroom at the north has some trees that are flagged as the adult alternate.
So if we didn't take that, they'd still grade it, it would just be all grass, right? Not to say
Right.
we couldn't have a earthen path, you know, weaving our way around there.
But the drainage wouldn't be there then?
I think the drainage is just across the path, is that the purpose?
Correct. So we want to, those are included as part of the alternate. You're basically a field. If you don't take the path, so the drainage swales crossings don't get installed.
So Graham, did I hear you say that this was almost promised to the land trust and others?
The plantings, I don't think the trail wasn't necessarily promised to them. It was that we would, you know, work with them on a pollinator, you know, the specifics of the pollinator garden. So in the landscaping, I don't think we're really committed to building a walking path per se. And they might prefer a natural as opposed to a stone path like this. Anyway.
Okay.
I don't know if this came up specifically during any of the land use approval processes, the path itself. I mean, this is a like a recreational path.
Yeah, it was part of the application drawings, but I don't recall much discussion on it.
If there's a stone a crushed stone path, does the stone occasionally need to be replaced or replenished in some way?
Yeah,
Does
it
it
requires
wash out
maintenance.
in storms and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a lot of maintenance. I mean, there's a lot of weeds grow up in those stones, I can tell you from experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think we're better off having the grass, and then we can just, if we want to create an informal path or something like that, I think we'd be better off.
I mean, my only thought counter to that is you wouldn't want disabled children to not be able to access the same stuff that the able-bodied kids can. So, you would need a path there in order to allow that. Again, other than, the other side of that is it needs to be maintained once it's there.
Right, and I think there's some question about whether the stone does that fully comply with the ADA, or would you have to actually pave it to guarantee access?
And the base scope is just, if I'm correct, the base scope is just a field with light sloping, so it's not as though there are elements there that need access or not. It's just
Right, you're not going to a
lawn.
bleacher. Yeah, usually if that, the ADA thing, and it isn't even the classroom, I mean, is it that nature's classroom? I can't quite see that. So in worst case, you might have to put in some kind of a path to there, down to that.
That's part of the alternate scope as well.
Okay,
Those trees, that's all part of the alternate. So if you don't take the alternate, there's no classroom to have to access.
Okay, there's no place to go to.
Classroom would just mean
yeah, you just
trees
have a
and
class field.
sitting there. Yeah.
And if you zoom back out, between the upper field and the lower field, is that a retaining wall that bows there to the south?
Agree.
No, it's just those are contour lines.
Okay.
So there'll be a little slope there in between the relatively flat, two relatively flat areas.
Yes.
With a
Yeah.
little slope in between. Okay.
Yeah. So functionally, it would be the same. You just wouldn't have a path going around it.
Correct.
But yeah, I mean, I think the maintenance would be concerned, and I mean, we can get 99%, 90% of the functionality without having to have a stone path.
But what was the purpose for the path? I mean, what do you see someone using it for? Or how would they use it? Just to walk around? Or would it be an organized thing with the classroom? Was it something requested? How did it come about? Do we know?
We had discussed a pollinator pathway. We had assumed that classes would be traveling along that pathway, and if it's formalized like this, we are obligated to provide accessibility,
Gotcha.
as opposed to, say, a free kind of a free multipurpose field, free use multipurpose field.
Gotcha. So they can still take the science class out there and walk across the field and carry the kid that can't get his wheelchair out there or whatever. Or I mean, I don't know, how does that work?
Yeah, they would probably walk back across the field rather than follow the path.
Right.
Reality.
Yeah.
Kids being
So
kids, yeah.
it seems like it's not, I don't know. I
Well,
could go with it.
Can I ask, would it decrease the price significantly or at least substantially if you just went with the upper half of that path and not that lower projected peninsula? I mean, it seems like it's taken a full third of it away in terms of material and maintenance. And then you could build the pollinator garden up on, you know, a little bit north there. And then
If-
all the kids would have access to it.
So Adam, I'll jump in here, but maybe you can clean up what I'm about to say. If I'm making any errors. The way that the bid alternate is, you either accept it or you reject it. You can't partition a publicly bid alternate. You can remove the entire scope and rescope it to do your suggestion, Seth. But in terms of what we can formally accept from a publicly bid project, it's either the alternate as presented or not.
So you can't do change orders, change requests?
Yes, you can, but you can't do that with this action.
So we'd have to
okay.
approve it first and then go back and modify it.
And with
Okay.
the-
Well,
I think you'd want to reject it and then go back.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, one way or the
Yeah.
other.
Also, without having the civil and landscape architects on the call, having that, chopping off that portion of it, I imagine they'd still want to look at the grading, still want to look at what that transition looks like, as opposed to just taking an axe to the gravel portion of it and leaving grass there. So, that's something we can ask the question. I know there's timing concerns, and I think some of the site work is starting over at that portion of the site sooner than some of the other components. So just from a timing perspective, it may be more challenging to try to snipe the path in terms of a change order this early on. So to Nick's point, if there's a desire for something different, it's probably best to reject and come up with that alternative scope as a comprehensive effort. Something else as opposed to trying to
But
sneak it in
it
quick
would have to be
and then end
done
up with problems
quickly
later.
though. It would have to be done quickly though, right?
For something that involves grading like that. Yes.
And
That's
then
the
or do we have to, who would redesign it and who would pay them to redesign it? Does that open a whole can of worms that way?
Justin.
I would think that's an ad alternate from our design, an ad or a change order from our designer.
I think without putting words in Graham's mouth, I think the where the notion was going was that this is a wider conversation with the land trust to understand exactly the nature of how we would the town and the schools would want to have a pollinator pathway and try and leverage that into a later phase as the building is close to opening.
Would it affect the cost though, if you're not doing the grading now?
I mean, we
Well,
would
my-
get the grading, we just wouldn't get the pathways. I mean, no drainage. So there might be some minor changes because you wouldn't
Okay.
have funky little
Yeah,
drainage.
I understand the grade is there, but as
Yeah.
far as like the base for the path and stuff, that's part of the ad alternate, right? Like
Yes.
the gravel base and all that's compacted and blah, blah, blah. To do that later, would it be more expensive if we came back and put it back in?
Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think it's fair to say that if you said, 4 or 5 months from now, we want to do that alternate, wouldn't
That
be
exact scope.
It's an alternate, but as a change order, yeah, I think it's fair to say it would be more. It's hard to say how much more though at this point.
I think we need to determine if we want it or not now. Because I think to add it back later would be just adding more money. So
Or
if
you
you're
could
gonna
add
want
it back in part by, just doing it on surrounding the northern part of the field and not that
Right.
southern appendage.
Yeah, there might be kind of a happy medium, Seth, where you reject
Right.
it now.
But
Do
who's
something.
redesigning it?
How much redesign does it need? You still need that one grate right in the middle of the hill. And then you're just lopping off from, that top oval down. Right?
But to that point, yes, it's not, designing a whole wing of a building. It should be looked at by the person that's designing the stormwater runoff and retainage and all that. So it is not, a Herculean effort. It's not 2 hours worth of CAD work either. So if the notion, kind of to set the table for discussion for tonight, if this exact configuration isn't desired tonight, then it's probably a rejection, and then we can work on what would be desired as part of a change order alternative to this exact scope for this exact bid alternate.
Okay.
Yeah, and the land trust, one of the members of the land trust is a landscape wetland planting designer, and who formerly worked for Bob, coincidentally, a former employee of the town. So I'm sure he'd be very interested in assisting with the plantings and some of the site design stuff.
Okay, that's fine.
Bob would vouch for him, I'm sure. So I think maybe the best path is just to kind of not take action on this one, and then we'll double back and regroup, and if we can incorporate, we have a little time on this. It'll just be built this way. They might need to, if you take that out, they might have to change the grading a little bit because it doesn't pond water, so it drains overland. But I think you're creating maintenance issues, and creating that little drainage stuff is just going to be a maintenance problem for pocketing water, I think.
Next alternate is the outdoor storage. This is one where strongly recommended to have the outdoor storage that's not incorporated within the building for things like the tractors and snowblower equipment, things like that. And that would be something decided early again, because there's site prep work around the foundations involved. For 41,000.
I have a question, and I don't want to upset any of the town people, but it's just a question. Is the school going to have its own equipment, or is the equipment from the other schools going to be used over here too because of proximity, or are we doubling up on equipment? How does that work?
Can I answer that?
Please, I'd like you to, yes. Like I said, I'm not trying to upset you. I just want to know, just curious.
No upset. It's a great question. And I've been here since the last building opened, and the building committee in 2003 bought us all new equipment for the new school. So my expectations were that would be part of the FF&E, and that all the new equipment would be purchased for the new school as part of the plan.
That's often the case. Yes.
Okay. So the school itself would have its own equipment and not be the same equipment that's used around the corner.
That would be the case.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, a little crazy to have new equipment and not garage it or take care of it. So
No, I understand. That makes perfectly
I'm for
good sense. Perfectly good sense. That's why I was asking.
I mean, this would be a night, I guess, in theory, we could do this off the books later on. But timing, you got to grade for it and prep it, right? And it'd be difficult to get back in and create a building.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Where is it on the site plan? Can you show us?
And then Justin, short answer is back of house.
Yep.
Where
by
the
the
truck,
loading area.
where the truck drop is or whatever, the loading area?
Yes.
Okay. I just couldn't remember. Thank you.
And how many square foot is it again? Just it's in here. I don't know if it's in here.
12 by 20, so 240.
40.
And is it architecturally consistent with the proposed building?
It's a prefabricated storage facility, and we will be reviewing the submittal as it comes through.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we put it in.
That's typical for these type of outbuildings, if you will, that are associated with a new building or a building outside of a loading area.
Yeah, and that it's really low price per square foot. So I would like to make the motion that we add it in.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that, yes.
Got it. Any further discussion? I know we'd always talked about probably adding something like this in at some point. Here, any further comments? This could be a donation opportunity for naming rights.
Wait, I'm sorry. Is this last call for everything, or because I wanted to circle back to something? I'm sorry.
No, this is just on the
Yeah, item by
storage
item.
building.
Yeah. Yeah, we
Okay,
can-
all right, sorry.
Okay, so with motions on the
Maybe
table,
Bill will put his name on it since he's retiring. It could be the McMahon building. No, okay.
he's already got his office over there. That's the big. That's the way I always looked at it. So all motion on the table, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, and then the
Unanimous?
last alternates is the landscape plantings. This has some time on it, and might be something that's either considered later, or if there's a different scope for the pollinator path, or whatever that ends up being. Wasn't boxed in red just because this is something much more easy to add later if need be. Of course, it could be approved tonight if you'd like, but that's why it's not highlighted.
No, I think you're reading the crowd correctly.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Seth, did you want to make an impassioned plea for a particular item?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I lost track there because Craig texted me. Dr. Cook had to jump off. So he had asked me to circle back around to the horizontal sunshades, and specifically to ask, is that something that can be added to the building later, like through a grant-funded project?
Why not?
Ideally, it's integral to the aluminum fabrication of the aluminum storefront windows. An aftermarket solution would be difficult, and potentially the connection to it would be potentially problematic.
Compromised, yeah.
Yeah, if I can be generous.
Yeah. Hey, what do you think? An egg solution there? Yeah.
Justin, do you think that it would qualify for energy conservation based on the IRA? I kind of think it would.
I don't know. Jeff, you want to take this one?
I don't think so. I don't think it's listed as one of the, it's not really a system. There's definitely glazing types. So there's the dynamic glass, but I haven't seen solar shades being included in.
I mean, you would think that there's no doubt in the summer that's significant. So, yeah, I just thought it's worth checking. Maybe not.
Well, just the fact that Dr. Cook wanted me to circle back and ask about that makes me feel like he thinks that it's a significant enough addition that he would like the committee to consider it. And it's $70,000. It's not $150,000. So.
I mean, we didn't reject it outright, but the time is short to make a decision.
Yeah.
So that's once that ship sailed, it's probably going to be sailed. So I think there's also some optics here, relative to some of the stuff. I mean, until we have the better numbers on, I mean, it's quote unquote only 70,000, but at this point, when we were scraping for 70, but when we were, where we were 6 months ago, 70 grand was a lot of money we wrestled with a lot of things to take $70,000 out. And unfortunately, if a year from now we have, hundreds of thousands of dollars left over, it's hard not to take the decision. But I think I agree with Justin. It would be hard to retroactively do something that isn't going to look like it was an afterthought, unfortunately.
And if it has no benefit to the UI and that kind of thing, it's kind of hard to justify this, as a standalone issue.
I agree.
Okay. Well, I think the testimony was that it has negligible, not none, but I take your point.
Right.
All right. I can tell Dr. Cook that I
Yeah.
circled back around and
You did.
asked.
You gave it a
You
shot.
did your job.
And it's recorded. I'll vouch for it. You fought the good fight. You died on that sword.
Thank you.
So that's it in terms of the votes and approvals for this evening. Any other questions on GMP or next steps? We'll be back for additional discussions about how to, both for the linoleum flooring as well as just getting into construction as we move on. But for this evening, that's the locus of motions and votes that we did.
Yeah, I would like to hear more about the linoleum, the savings, and then, I know anecdotally it's a savings, but I would like to vet that a little further. So that would be, it's a big number, but my understanding it is a significant savings, but it's a lot of savings there. So I'm sure you'll build a case. I assume Peter and Bill are strong proponents of the linoleum product.
Pete, you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I'm just weighing in here. I had to find my unmute button. Yeah, well, the linoleum certainly lasts a lot longer than the vinyl will. I want to do a couple little checkups on it because the current products versus past products may be a little different. Vinyl has been great. It's inexpensive. It takes treatment well. I know the linoleum takes a little longer, but it does have quite a bit longer life expectancy.
Okay, so
I support Peter.
Got it. Okay, so we'll have like a pros and cons kind of thing, and we'll double back when we have a little time. So.
Yeah, I'll make something up for you and show you what it is.
Got it.
That would be helpful.
Thank you. And do we have a Board of Selectmen meeting coming up Monday, I believe?
Yeah, so basically the votes from here will be the discussion at the Board of Selectmen, most significantly the GMP, but then also the alternate 7, 9, and 11 that were approved here, just as part of that overall discussion. And then presuming there's an approval at the Board of Selectmen, that will be the trigger for executing the contract with those items and moving it forward for final execution for Cobain and for Selectmen.
Beautiful. And then so we'll be on schedule. Continue to be on schedule. Sorry. My wife's updating me on NCAA scores. Sorry. I didn't put a.
Graham, I can share the next topic is just the schedule. Do you want me to just screen share that?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
So tonight we had our special meeting. Thank you for that. We had previously earlier today our first owners pre-construction kickoff. So those will be weekly moving forward. As we mentioned, Board of Selectmen on the 25th on Monday. And then April is largely just getting into the meat and potatoes of construction. Going to give a brief update to the Board of Education on the 2nd, and we have a groundbreaking ceremony on the 3rd. But within April, at our SBC meetings, which I forgot to copy here, that's where we'll be talking in more about some of these additional scope items and Ryerson demolition and the potential for solar panels and things like that. So that's the items to come in April.
Yeah, and we have when's our next standing meeting unless we change it? What's the next official date?
I'll double check, but it should be April 1st. Yes, April 1st. Graham, you're muted if you're trying.
So moving on to the next item, I think we're all set. Great job walking us through that, Adam. Any public?
No public.
Got it. Any further discussion, remarks, any comments, anything else anyone would like to add? Okay, great. Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I will.
Aaron, you've been busy today. Good. Very active member. You
Earning
get
my keep, yeah.
You got the building committee member of the month award this week.
Oh, goody. I'll put it on my resume.
Got it. Do we have a second?
Sure.
Woody, seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye.